Great to be here. I would say that this is just a wonderful pleasure to be at this data center summit. Thank you so much, Economic Times and all the organizers who have put in the effort to get us all together here. And I'd say that I definitely appreciate the introduction that was given to me, and that made me feel very, very welcome here to come and share a few of my perspectives in terms of how the industry is shaping in this area. And certainly, the quantitative aspect of things is probably I will stay away from, because I think there is enough stats, and in the data center word itself comes very heavy with statistics. So I'm going to stick to the more qualitative aspect of things, where we have to look at maybe the numbers on the slide, but let's talk to each other much more to know where we are going, how we are placed today, right now, and really, is there something that we are talking in the future, or is it already right here in front of us, and we haven't yet crossed the bar, which means that we got to be a lot more agile in terms of getting to the future today. So with that, I'm going to just mention a little bit of background. I'm from Reliance Group of companies, primarily also covering a lot of the things in Reliance Communications. And Reliance Tech Services is the internal IT organization which services all of these companies together. And from my experiences, which has been in the worldwide arena for about 20 years, and then I came here for last 5.5 years, I'm here in Mumbai, I'd say that things have moved so rapidly. And there was a time when it was the internet boom, and today all I can relate to is there is one word, which is e-commerce, rather two words maybe, e-commerce supplemented with m-commerce. So for me, actually, it is not just an issue where you're talking about some 26 billion devices which are connecting to each other, creating an internet of things, and beyond that, what is next for the users is what we need to worry about. So when I segregate the entire set of problems into a couple of aspects, I look at it, number of devices being mind-boggling, and we really don't want to keep worrying about what kind of device which customer is using, which user is using, and therefore try and align an IT infrastructure, specifically data center based, which can align to all these different kinds of developments that various vendors, suppliers, and the community, the OTT players, are bringing up into the ecosystem. What I would like to really worry about is how do we make sure that the users are completely unaware of what devices, what introductions are coming into place, not just in India, but worldwide. Because today, the world has become extremely small. And as you know, the Internet of Things, but much more on the free Internet that has been introduced very recently, there is a complete focus in terms of bringing every person, everyone across the world into a connected arena. Now, how can we reach out to them so that they are getting exactly what they want? They are not getting all the things that they really don't want to see. Because today, when you see, even as late as yesterday, there was this news on the approval on the freedom of speech on internet and social media. Now, if you were worried that how much is going to be the data traffic across the various types of connectivities and data centers, we better start worrying today, even in a different orbit. Because if the freedom of speech, with so many billions and billions of people across the world connecting and talking to each other, what is this entire thing about social media? What kind of shape it is going to take? And the new ecosystem that is going to be formed as a result of that, I think is something yet to be understood. From what I see here is clearly social media, certainly the top one. Analytics, I think, is going to shape a lot of things which will define the future of our data centers. Because just like in the network terminology, a dumb network versus an intelligent network became a topic of discussion for most of the technologists and industrialists, the same situation is coming in the area of data centers, where it is no longer just thinking about large computing powers, large servers, large storage, but thinking about how small can they become, how tiny they can become so that you're actually able to get the intelligence out of it, but not still have to look into the type of things that we are really worried about right now, which we are going to talk about in a minute or so. I'll share with you a very specific example. For example, if I have to process 20 billion CDRs day in, day out as an operator, I bet in the BFSI segment there is significantly that amount of data that is passing through. And to add to all of that, being able to make sure that you're actually thinking about security of all of this data. So when I'm looking at the type of services which are much more oriented towards a WhatsApp type of an environment and no more of that, paid voice calling, for instance, or it's much more in terms of the data services where the users don't really want to be bothered about, you telling them what data they want. They want to be independent. They want their privacy. They want to make sure that they can actually access any kind of content that they want, right? So you're seeing the difference. There was a world when we had a static data center. There was a time when users were told, look, this is the service that you can get. But clearly we have seen in the past 1 or 2 years, the things have completely changed. The paradigm shift has happened at the user end. And when the users are finding that good flavor of being able to access whatever content they want, they're able to get from the OTT players many of these things for free as well, and they're able to get best effort service, but it's not really bad service, then there is a problem that we have at hand. And I think these kinds of data center summits, not just one, but in multitudes, need to be organized to bring the thought process together as an industry consortium between suppliers and operators, other service providers, to really figure out extremely fast what is the next thing that we need to do in order to overcome this problem. Otherwise, it is always going to be a futuristic data center problem, and we are never going to reach that particular stage of what is that data center. I think most of you are very well familiar with the aspect that, there is a huge amount of infrastructure, real estate space that is required in order to host any data center. And today, I would say the biggest challenge is certainly one that of energy savings. And we all have heard about the Green IT initiative. And when we talk about Green IT and the practices that have been introduced to date, I think there is clearly an improvement that needs to be made. I myself have a lot of large data center space as an operator, but I would say that if we don't look at the first problem of appropriate consolidation of servers, regardless of whether it comes from an HP, EMC, Oracle, whoever are the large data server providers and storage providers, I think we really need to bring all of them together, think about how to consolidate these servers in such a way that the management part of these things also can be easily enabled. So you're talking about a hybrid, convergent data infrastructure as not of present, but actually of yesterday. So I'm still bringing your future back to the past and bringing it back to the future, or to the present right now. The second most important thing is certainly software defined. And we got introduced to infrastructure as a service, as platform as a service, and I believe that it is really IT as a service that we are talking about. And when we think about these data centers, the modernization efforts that are needed in terms of bringing it to something which is much more cartridge-based, I think we are at least making some step and some progress in the last couple of months, about a year, I would say, that we have come to a state where I'm not having to buy that whole bulk together and we can just put in the blades, etc. So now the operations and organization needs to be aligned in order to move to this kind of a modern infrastructure. So when we are only talking about, say, high availability, disaster recovery, and the high maintenance and OPEX costs, we look at a 5 to 7% approximately of IT spend as part of any revenue generating business unit. And if that 5 to 7% with the amount of data growth that we are envisioning with the social media and analytics to be applied on top of it, I think that budget is certainly likely to increase. And it is important if we look at the problem in such a way that infrastructure and application and alignment are done properly, then you are really looking at, one, on the content side of things, the multitude of contents right on top of it, the analytics part, which is then going to divert your campaign management systems so that the right kind of information reaches to the right customers, and proactively for businesses to survive. Those kind of things can also be aligned, that you are actually putting in at least 90 to 95% of the targeted customers you are able to reach. Otherwise, you are just thinking about doing up a campaign, a broadcast campaign, and possibly touching maybe only 5 to 7% people. So what is this futuristic data center that we are all looking for, which needs to be there in today, which is the present? I think most important is thinking about the digitization initiatives that government is taking up and what we are all going to be part of and already part of in some cases, but that is extremely small right now. It's probably 0.001% of the digital natives that we have been able to touch. What we are seeing that when the generating demand of digital natives is taken into account, the main difference in the data center strategy has to be from the offline data availability of either D-2, D-3, which is day-2, day-3, to be moved towards real time. So real time means that you have data at your tips. What you need for making a decision, you're not waiting for even a single day. And with this much amount of data, not having to wait even for a single day, what is it that we need to do from all of our participation in these kind of consortiums to make it real time? And that's where the whole concept about, number one, technology changes in data center. Number two is on organization. I always feel through some of the experiences I've had, technology is actually the easy part, because you can define contributions, you can define requirements, and you can therefore define the technology based on that. But it's really the organizational setup, because if you look at it today, you have a lot of human intervention, manual labor. I don't sleep because there is a 24/7 operations that needs to be in place. There has to be complete monitoring from an administrative perspective of how much is the temperature. Now, that is the world, that is the old world. Today, if you're talking data centers, you are in a very, very modern world. It is not that same old mundane world that we thought of data center or even CIOs as the mundane job. It is an exciting area which is driving the businesses. IT and data centers are the ones who are going to drive the business today and tomorrow. So it is definitely something that we need to pay attention to. So the first part which I mentioned was on the technology and the strategic changes. The key here is to have the software-defined data centers, where the intelligent control layer is there. And again, I will draw the analogy from software-defined networks, where the intelligence is really right up on the top through software modules that are elastic. You can easily configure, reconfigure, and you can change things easily as things change basis the demand of the very large mass-scale community. For a mass-scale transformation of the community to get what they want, today and tomorrow's data centers have to be software-defined. And that clearly means that you are actually enabling remote control of the data centers. Think about a situation where you don't have to send a single human being into the data center operations environment. It is all remotely controlled. You are able to see clearly the dashboard of what changes need to be made, and you are able to clearly see if the business forecast for this quarter or next quarter is going to be at least 30% higher than what you were achieving yesterday, then you need to make sure that you can enable the elasticity that you get from the data centers. Today, if I look at the problems from our suppliers, and this is a proper feedback that our supplier community should take up, the amount of time to procure a server or a storage is very, very high. Forget about real time. If you have to start thinking about server storage, you have to almost have cycle times of 6 to 8 months so that you are able to get the right kind of hardware, configure, and do all kinds of changes. Again, I'm talking mass scale. So if we have to really think about cutting down on all of these procurement times, installation, delivery, commission, and all of that, we should be talking only about software-defined data centers. Secondly, clearly on the hyper-converged systems, I would say that while there is some movement around that, and certainly cloud is helping us move towards from the brick and mortar based data centers to the virtualization and finally to the cloud, which is infrastructure as a service, I think it is not there yet in terms of being able to manage the very large vendors' equipments with a common software controlled management system. And to triple and double that effect, worse it is because you have your own security methods for individual suppliers. While again, there are some common initiatives continuing and going on, it's really not matured enough to make sure that at the topmost layer of the control and management structure, the security, what is the rule, what is the definition, none of that is existent right now. So there is an opportunity that we all can crack right away. And finally, I think certainly control has to be completely automated software, which is probably phase 3, once we have moved to the software-defined networks. And last but not the least is organization design. We must think about low OPEX, less manpower, and the complete reorganization setup of infrastructure operations, application operations, and most important of all of that, combining the two, are the customer operations. So if we think about these three-legged stools, we think about an agile organization which is going to be dedicated towards only next generation natives, the digital natives. It clearly means that data center, which is existent as of yesterday, needs to become today and tomorrow as data center as a service only. And that change is not going to be very easy. It is going to be disruptive and possibly very disaggregated. But we need to combine our minds together, and I believe that this is a great opportunity for initiating some kind of consortiums across the organizations where this particular problem statement can be taken and appropriately addressed so that the amount of disaggregation it can cause to live environments that are being supported and millions of customers that are being supported can be least impacted because of these changes. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time and all the best for the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is CIO, Reliance Group, Ms. Alpna Doshi. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. May I please request you to please wait for a moment, ma'am, just a moment, thank you. May I please request Sector Head, Rajesh Kupchandani, to present a small memento. Thank you, ma'am, for your time and, of course, your views and perspectives. Once again, a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.